The most widely published book in human history reveals that we are created in the image of God. Throughout our human journey, each encounter is an opportunity to see the shared humanity in ourselves and others. Regardless of one's views on religion, each experience and each story weaves us together towards a common path. A path of transformation, a process of growth and understanding, a recognition that, at our core, we share a common destiny. What does the search for truth really mean in our lives? How can we find a sense of unity in a world so diverse and divided? As we reflect on these questions, we start to uncover a fundamental connection that binds us all beyond our differences. Welcome to Created in the Image of God, Building Vibrant Communities, with our host, Wade Franson. Today's episode is Progressive Revelation.
Hey everyone, it's Wade Franson. I'm back in the studio with another fascinating guest for this morning's episode of Created in the Image of God. His name is Reynaldo Pareja, and he has spent many years studying into the topic of unity. And he's written a number of books on this topic, and today we're going to dive into one in which he illustrates the essential principle of unity and how it pervades everything. Welcome to the studio, Reynaldo.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here. I've seen some of your programs. They're fascinating the way you carry them out.
Well, I appreciate that. We certainly are getting some really interesting guests, and I'm glad you joined us this morning. So tell us a little bit then about yourself. As we always do on this show, we like to go into your creation story. Who were your parents? I noticed a little bit of an accent. I'm always curious where people came from and what the forces were that shaped them in the first years of their life. So tell us about your childhood and upbringing and where you came from.
Okay, briefly, I was born in Colombia, South America. That's why my accent it's noticeable. It's not pure English. I had the luck that my father had the foresight to give us a bilingual education. So he put us in a bilingual school in Bogota, in Cali, in Barranquilla. All those places we had the opportunity of being there. And that's where I learned my English to the point that I can express myself coherently. My father used to be working at the Exxon. At that time, it was called in Colombia, ESO, Colombiana. And because of his expertise and his desire to grow up inside the organization, he accepted a lifestyle that would really mark my life and my wife's life also. And that is in 25 years of a marriage that he lived with my mother. We moved to 7 cities, I think 15 to 20 times. So it was definitely a pilgrimage of moving from city to city, culture to culture in Colombia, the different cultures of the different regions. So that gave me almost a background that I was open to not being strictly, tied to one place or growing up. And that gave me a lot of contact with more than different cultures, many different types of people, because in the high schools I was in there were, Americans from all over the place, and other students, not Americans, but from other nationalities. So that gave me that background of openness to open cultures.
Was he in oil exploration? Is that why he was?
No,
what aspect of his work?
He was basically in the administrative side. He was very much into the administration, the overseeing administration of how the gas stations were run in every city. He ended up administrating a gas station when he retired.
So that must have been quite challenging in some ways to constantly have to make new friends, and always be the one. But then maybe there were others in those same schools that were in similar,
Yeah.
maybe was it kind of like that in a sense, a little bit like sometimes in the military. I also moved a lot when I was a child. I went to 12 different schools growing up, and in different countries. So, but I was always in public school, and my experience was different from anybody else. But then there were military kids who they were around a lot of other kids having the same experience. What was it like that for you? That some of your friends, even though they were short lived, they were going through the same thing, or did you feel different and like an outsider?
No, I would say that it was very much like that because being a bilingual school, that was not easy to get into, especially um, the fee to get into one of those schools was very high, and so yeah, we were more or less the same type of upbringing and social status, etc.
Got it. Got it. So then, what about religion and spirituality? How was that introduced into your life?
Well, I grew up as most of us Colombian at that time. We only had really one church, a Catholic church. The Protestant, as they were called, or the evangelicals, they didn't arrive in Colombia until the 1960s, or became more established after the 1960s. But before then, it was nothing but Catholicism. So that was the background in terms of religious introduction into a religion. And it was a very traditional way of being taught Catholicism. It was normally taught by either a nun in elementary school or by a priest in high school. And when I went to the bilingual schools, that was not allowed. Religion was not taught there because they didn't want to get into any conflict of religions because of the diversity of people being there. There were Muslims and Arabs and all of that. So there was no religion taught. And that then I kept being taught through the contact with priests. I had at least 2 or 3 priests that I became really good friends with along the way. And that kept me more or less in touch with religion. But really, when I became really in touch with religion is when I went to high school in the San Jose, California. I did my junior year there. I was all alone in a hostel, one of these families that took in a foreign student, and I was there for 1 year. It was the Bellamy Prep High. I can still remember San Jose, California. And there I met a young Jesuit. He was not a priest. He was at the stage of being a teacher. The period between before you even started studying theology, you went and did a practice of 1 year, 2 years of teaching. And he taught us English, but he was very good at it. I mean, in the sense that he presented literature in a very experiential, very down to earth, very creative way. And through him, I became aware that his lifestyle was interesting. As a Jesuit, he was a Jesuit. And so I kept close contact with him. And that allowed me to have the upbringing. I was in a very strict Catholic family there too. So I kept on having, the regular mass every Sunday, etc., etc. But there is where I think I first began to think that that would be a lifestyle that I would like to carry on. And so when I got back to Colombia from that experience, I was that time I was in a Jesuit school. And so I became friend with one of the Jesuits there, and that more or less kept me going in that direction until I finally made the decision to enter the society.
So you're now, after that 1 year, which was like a study abroad, I assume that was like an opportunity that your parents thought would be good for you, that you took advantage of to go study in San Jose. You came back to Colombia, finished up high school. What is the educational system like there? Then you go on to university, but you chose a path to continue to study religion, or tell us about that.
No, my decision was, by that time when I graduated, my decision, I wanted to enter the Jesuits order. Well, that was a blow to my father, who was very, very Catholic style, maybe mass, and that was about it. Otherwise, the other one, religion, no, that wasn't part of his formal education at all in the sense
What
of
about your mother? Was she more
well,
religious?
she was very intuitive, and she encouraged me to keep on pursuing the dream.
Okay. So then, so then you went ahead. Your father was unhappy, but
Yeah.
you were happy. So you entered the Jesuit order. What was that like? I'm not Catholic. My wife was raised Catholic, but I really don't know what that was like. So tell us a little bit about what that was like, that transition from high school now into the Jesuit order.
Yeah. Well, first, I separated myself from they were living at that time in Barranquilla. That's up north, a city up north. No, Cali. That's in the middle. And then I moved to Bogota to live because that was the point of entrance. So I moved there and had a pre-screening, 3 month screening with a priest, a Jesuit priest, that put me on trial to see if I really had a vocation or not. And so I became associated with a congregation. 3 months, yeah, it's steadily until he says, yeah, you're good. You're good to go in. And so that's when I entered in 1962.
And was that then a more formal religious education? What was the education like then for you?
No, it was very structured. In Jesuits have first it's called the novitiate. That's 2 years, in which you really get to know the company, the Society of Jesus, and then you have several trials, month trials. One is hospital, the other one is teaching, the other one is pilgrimage, etc., just to see you. Then inside those 2 years of the novitiate, you have to do a lot of humble jobs, like taking care of the pigs, going to the feeding the chickens, uh, doing the gardening, working in the kitchen, washing dishes, serving the community at lunchtime, picking up the dishes, washing them again, and uh, and it was very monastic in the sense that there was very strict silence periods. You got up, you got dressed, and then you went to meditation, and then we had the mass, and after that breakfast, all in silence, all in silence. And after that, we went to the first activity that was cleaning up the corridors in the structure that was outside of Bogota. It was about 2 hours ride from Bogota City, the capital, and it was a huge house, very big house. That where they had the novitiate and the junior year. That was the first phase of studies of the classics, literature, especially literature, Latin and Greek, which I wasn't very proficient at. That wasn't my part. But the other one, the reading was extraordinary. So
And then was the idea that you would then live a celibate life and become a priest, or what was the path for you personally moving forward? What was the goal?
That's exactly. Then you went and did the studies, the classical literature studies, and that was for 2 years in that building over there outside of Bogota. Then you went to Bogota and you did the philosophy years, and that was 2 years, philosophy back and forth all the way through. Then you went to teaching, the experience of teaching for 2 years. Then you went in and studied theology, formal theology, for 4 years. On the third year, you were allowed to ordain if you had decided to get ordained as a priest. Then you have one more year of theology, and then another year of probation, and then you get a full uh, status of being a priest, that you had a job as a priest.
Well, before I ask my next question, I have to tell my joke about this. You may have heard this joke, but I don't know how. I heard this years ago. Somebody entered into a program like that. There was a vow of silence. You only got to meet with the head of the whatever monastery once a year to talk. And so after the first year, this new person gets to have his audience with the head of the monastery, and he says, well, you've been here a year. What was it like? Do you have anything you want to say? And the man says, the rooms are cold. And then he gets sent back, and he does another year. And when he comes back, he says, well, it's been a year, have things gotten better? Do you have anything to say? He says, the beds are hard. And he goes back. And then, in the third year, he comes back and he says, well, have things gotten better? You've been here another year. What do you have to say? He says, the food is terrible and I quit. And the head of the monastery says, I'm not surprised. You've done nothing but complain since you've been here. So my question is, how far did you get, and when did you leave? How far did you get, and what was it that caused you? Because I assume you didn't go on to become a Jesuit priest, but maybe you did. Tell us about that.
No, I went as far as the third year of theology, formal theology study.
Oh, wow.
And I was about 3 months away from getting ordained or not. Then during my theology years, I was really lucky because the teacher, Jesuit priest, who taught the history of the church, he was honest enough to allow us, at that time, it was an exception, to allow us to actually go into the library, theology library, and pick and choose books that really you were interested in reading about. And so when he came to explain the Trinity dogma, I became quite a bit curious about that Trinity dogma, because from the logical point of view, it didn't make sense. 3 persons, one God, 3 persons, one distinct, the Father, the Son, the Holy Spirit, all one, different persons and only one God. That did not make sense. And so I had the opportunity of reading actually a historical recount of how that dogma got defined. And it wasn't divinely inspired. It was a Roman emperor that obliged by force to bring in the bishops of Alexandria and Rome to Nicaea, and had a council in which he presided the council and gave his opinion on how he felt about it in terms of the dogma. And the reasons why he had that, and the one that convened the second council and ratified it all, it was basically a political reason. He wanted it to have abolished in the Roman Empire all the divergent religions and all the different gods. He only wanted it to have one religion that he could control indirectly underneath first, and secondly, that he could give validation to his own emperor authority as a God-given gift. And so that was immersed in all the politics that were in behind the definition of the Trinity in the first council. And actually, that's exactly what he did. As soon as the council ratified it, he created the Christian religion as the state religion, abolished all other religions and gave them the power to the religion, to the Christianity, power to become the only one religion. That he, behind the scales, behind the curtains, he had, influence, total influence. And he managed then to get to believe that the authority that he had as an emperor was a God-given authority. And thereby, he was, validated by God. And that was one of the reasons why I started thinking, well, this is a man-made decision. This is not an inspired decision. And I kept digging in, and the second council was just the same way. It was another emperor that brought it back into place, and just about the same thing. He only introduced the Holy Spirit.
So what was the impact on you then of this personally? You decided to leave the Jesuit order?
No, simultaneously at that time, it was Paul, one of the popes, I think, Pope Paul VI, very conservative. And he came out with certain, not dogmatic, but religious orientation given to all the priests of how to handle. At that very moment, there was a question mark whether it was licit, religion-wise, to use contraceptives. And he forbade it, complete them. He says, no, nature has its way of doing things. We should not interrupt nature. If the kids come, it's God-given kids, you got to accept them. You are forbidden to use contraceptives. And I said to myself, well, in top of it all, dogma I don't believe in, that I'm supposed to defend afterwards and carry on the tradition. And this Pope telling me that me as a priest, I have to tell people and the couples, get them irresponsible not to be able to manage their own contraception. That doesn't make sense. That really, I don't want to do that. I don't want to spend my next 25 years defending things that I don't believe in, and I don't see the logic of.
Well, I can very much relate. The issues were a little different, but the same kind of what I was forced to believe or pretend to believe and teach, and also practical things that I was expected to do and teach for people to do. When I resigned from the ministry in 1995, this was to separate my faith from my paycheck. So it sounds like you were in a little bit of a similar situation. Yeah. So what happened? What happened? How did this play out?
The big difference, I had no paycheck.
Yeah, well, but it would have been a vocation, right? But similar.
No.
So
I resigned. I asked to be relieved of not getting ordained in 1975, and I was lucky enough that an ex-Jesuit, that I had known before, that he was heading a scholarship program, and he helped me get a scholarship to go to France to study.
And wow! So, where in France? Parlez-vous français aussi?
Oui, tout en bâti.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Yes, I went to France to the École des Hautes Études en Sciences Sociales, and I got a equivalent of a master's degree in communications there. Very good.
What city was that?
In Paris.
In Paris. Okay. Yeah, I lived in France briefly, and I was on a program as a college student in the summer, one summer as well there. Spent some time in Paris. Beautiful, beautiful city. Okay, so now you're studying abroad and getting a master's in communication. What about religion?
Completely disconnected.
Okay.
From there on, I went on furiously into learning how to earn a living. And I was lucky to start it with the USAID assistance program for developing countries, especially to work with mothers, non-literate women, and all the communication expertise I got there. I applied it in those countries, 5 countries.
Wow. And so what were those countries? And so you were now traveling in Europe and elsewhere, or?
Well, no, first I started in long-term assignments for normally for a period of 5 years in each country. I was in Dominican Republic, I was in Honduras, Dominican Republic, Ecuador, Peru, Colombia, in a stable manner. Then we came back, and then I came to the States, and we already had a kid, and we stayed here. But then I started.
So somewhere along the way, you met someone and got married.
In Paris.
Over that?
Paris did it. Paris did it.
Okay, Paris, the city of love.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
So did you marry somebody from France, or?
No, from Colombia.
Okay. Was she studying there, or how did that happen?
No, she was not studying there specifically. It was very interesting. I met her mother, and we clicked very nicely. We had very good conversations in Colombia. And she was just a 16-year-old kid at that time. So briefly, I met her, didn't pay much attention at all. And then she left for Puerto Rico, studied there, and then went to Germany, studied there, went to Austria, studied there. And then I ended up in Paris. And behold, the mother told, you got to look her up. She's in Paris. I looked at her, she was a full-grown woman. That was it.
All right, wonderful. So now you're back in Colombia, or what's next then in the story? Because we need to wrap up this segment, so we need to get back to religion and because the next segment is your books and stuff. So let's get to that. What happened?
No, then I was in several other countries, but not long term. In Rwanda, in Malaysia, in Philippines, and many places, Egypt, all doing intensive technical advising or putting together programs. And then I went to reside in U.S. for the sake of kids getting an education there. And there I met a Baha'i.
We have to go to break now. But so, how many children did you have at this point?
2.
So you had 2 children. Where were you living?
In Virginia. In
Virginia. Okay. So when we come back from this commercial break, we'll pick up the story in Virginia in the U.S. with Reynaldo. And may I ask your wife's name?
Patricia.
Reynaldo, Patricia, and their 2 children in Virginia. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back.
Reynaldo Pareja, PhD, is a scholar, communicator, and lifelong seeker of truth. With a doctorate in communication and sociology from the École des Hautes Études en Sciences Sociales in Paris, a master's in communication from Cornell University, and a foundation in philosophy, art, and literature from Universidad Javeriana in Bogotá, Reynaldo has dedicated his life to exploring the spiritual dimension of human existence, our purpose, our suffering, and the profound questions that shape the human journey. He is the author of an extensive collection of published works, offering deep reflections on consciousness, meaning, and the inner evolution of mankind. To explore his full body of work and learn more about his vision, visit ReynaldoAlternativeVision.com.
Welcome back to Created in the Image of God. We've been learning about Reynaldo Pareja, who spent years training to become a Jesuit priest, walked away from that, got an education in communications in Europe, met somebody who he had known from Colombia, married Patricia. Now he's living in Virginia, working with his family, 2 children, and he met a Baha'i. Tell us about that.
That was when I was first working in Honduras long term. There was a doctor that came to give a presentation at the end of the seminar, and he read a quote that really impressed me. the language he used of the document he read was extraordinary. It really hit me in my heart and my mind. So
But this was a secular meeting about communications and the work you were doing. But in that he had, I assume, a Baha'i quote as part of it, or
no? He concluded. He closed the seminar reading this document, which related to working with people. Extraordinary. The way that it was phrased, I thought it was spectacular.
Was this document a Baha'i statement?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So as soon as we finished the seminar, I came up to him and I said, "My God, what is it that you read? Where is it from? What is it?" Just, look, I cannot tell you now. Come to my house tonight, and then we can talk. So I was there sharp at 7:00.
Wow.
And then he starts telling me briefly an overview of the Baha'i faith. And let me tell you, that was my comeback to religion. So when I went back to Virginia, when I was there, I looked him up. He got me connected with a Baha'i family that took me as a child. And then we were invited continuously for 9 months to what we call in the Baha'i faith firesides. It's a guest is invited. He presents an aspect of the Baha'i faith, and then we have a dialogue, asking questions and getting answers, etc., etc. That put me on the road of research, and during 9 months, nonstop, every weekend.
How did your wife and children? How old were your children at this time?
Getting close to 12, between 12 and a little further than that. 14 almost.
Okay. So were they interested in what you were doing, or were they like, "Oh, this is some crazy thing Dad is doing," and my husband?
Well, let's put it this way. They came with us to some of the sessions, more than the ones that were appropriate for them. So they really got a good informal education about what the Baha'i faith was all about.
And your wife, Patricia, was she also interested?
Yeah, definitely.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So both of you were studying. Okay. So what were some of the key things? I mean, okay, the language generally appealed, but what else? What intellectually, what was it that appealed to you about this?
Well, the principles. Basically, it was the principles of the Baha'i faith, which you can be summarized, I think, in 6 of them. And pitch in if you know of another one. The unity of God, which definitely the contrary.
Yeah, when you have questions about the Trinity, that's a big one.
Yeah, but that cleared that one up instantly. The unity of God. The unity of all of humanity being created in the image and likeness of God. And so the differences between races did not exist. It was man-made. And definitely there was only one human, the human race. That to me was top-notch. Then the unity of religion. Then the unity of mankind. The unity of the soul and unity of mankind.
Yep. So the one I would add is kind of like a preliminary principle, even before all that, which is the independent investigation of truth and reality. Yeah. And this is a fascinating one to me because all of these differences, all of these distinctions, they are of God in a way, and they are endorsed by God because He is the one who gave us free will. Mm-hmm. He is the one who created us in His image with the ability to investigate and come to our own conclusions about things. We're not robots. We're not programmed. We're not forced to accept any of these onenesses. And we have all this diversity. As people, as you did in your early years, went in one direction, studying things in a specific way, to come back around later to this awareness and this understanding. And so there's a lot of differentiation that takes place at an individual level under the umbrella of oneness and religion. And as you know, and Baha'is know, there's two hidden words, which are primary principles: possess a pure, kindly, and radiant heart, that thine may be a sovereignty, ancient, imperishable, and everlasting. We get this from God. It wasn't just that emperor that claimed sovereignty. Every individual has sovereignty before God. And we retain that sovereignty when we have a pure heart. We see who we are. We see that we come from God. The second hidden word, the best beloved in my sight, is justice. Set it before thine eyes. Focus on justice. And God says, that I may confide in thee. So when we have a pure heart and we focus on truth and justice, God confides in us. And then he says, when he does, then we will see things through our own eyes and not through the eyes of another. We will be empowered by the Spirit of God to see things as they are and reach our own conclusions about reality and come to that oneness on our own terms, with our own individuality and with our own sovereignty intact. I don't know if you know this series Star Trek. In Star Trek, there's this thing called the Borg. The Borg is the collective, and you get assimilated into the Borg, and now you have no individual freedom.
Right.
The unity of God is not the Borg. It's something where you retain your freedom. And it says even the Baha'i faith preserves, it says, even the lesser loyalties. So we can have individual loyalties to certain things at the cellular level. We'll get into this as we get into your material, but at the cellular level, a single cell has a wall. And for that cell to survive, that cell wall has to remain intact. And the cell selectively decides what it lets in and what it lets out. So it can protect itself against poisons and toxins in the environment, but that cell becomes part of a larger collective. But it retains its individual characteristics as well. So it's that independent investigation of the truth, for me, is always forefront in my mind as we approach all these onenesses. That was just the one that I would add to that.
And I would add one that I left out by the last phrase, especially the last phrase you said, and that was progressive revelation. To me, that was one of the most revolutionary principles that I have ever heard, that you could actually see in all the religions the sequence of unity and of identity of God's message all across all religions. And you had, when you accept that principle, then religions don't become the feud between who has the truth. No, all of them have a specific amount of truth that is revealed progressively in history. And I wrote a book on it.
Wonderful. So let's dive into that. So now you've studied intensively into the Baha'i faith.
Oh, yes.
Did you then I assume you became a Baha'i? How does that work? How does one become a Baha'i?
Very easily. You say you declare in that Baha'u'llah is the most recent manifestation of God, and you want to be a Baha'i under the principle of his revelations.
So basically, you accept the principle of progressive revelation. You understand that, Abraham, Moses, Jesus, Muhammad, and Buddha, and, Noah, Adam, that these were all messengers of God that came, all the ones in the Bible and some that are not in the Bible, all around the world at all times. God has been sending his messengers to teach us his creation. And that has happened since Jesus. It didn't stop 2,000 years ago. And so you have to show an openness and a willingness to see where God is working, to recognize where he is manifesting himself today.
Oh, yeah.
And that's it, I guess, right? Okay, so then obviously then that leads to cooperation and unity and fulfilling the principles of all these teachers. Jesus, one of the most powerful statements of Jesus to me is this: why do you call me Lord, Lord, and don't do the things that I say. In other words, what's the point of professing your belief in Jesus if you aren't going to do what he asks you to do?
Definitely.
And Baha'u'llah said that too in the Kitab Aqdas, his most holy book. He says it's imperative that you recognize him as a messenger of God, for today, and that you obey his commandments. Just like every messenger, you can't have the one without, you can't proclaim your belief in something and then not submit to it and do what it asks, which is kind of the challenge you had with what the Catholics were professing, right?
Yeah.
Didn't want to believe in the Trinity, and you didn't want to force people to follow this rule that didn't make sense. Okay, so when did you start documenting what you were studying and learning in the form of writings and then books?
I would like to call it divine inspiration.
Mm-hmm.
I said to myself, how can I leave something behind of all these beautiful things, principles that I have been receiving. When I think I have this ability to express myself coherently in writing. And so I took each one of those principles of the Baha'i faith and started converting them into a book. For example, progressive revelation, I made it into a book. Equality of men and women, I made it into a book. Unity, the universal principle, I made it into a book. Who are the authoritative figures that can speak in the name of God? I made it into a book.
And where are these books available? How would one get a hold of these books?
But basically, you go to Amazon.com, has obviously there a few of them, or you can go to my website and then you can send me an e-message, saying whoever wants an electronic copy.
So let's dive into the content of one of these books. You found unity at all stages and all levels of creation.
Yeah.
Do you have a copy of that maybe to show us? Unity, awesome. So tell us a little bit about what's in there. The universal principle inherent in all creation.
Basically, what I did is I am going to read the titles of what is in the book, because I think that is the best resume.
Yep.
Is unity in material reality, unity at the microscopic level, unity in the mineral level, unity in the cosmos, unity in biological reality, unity in the plant structure, unity in the animal's internal organs, unity in men's internal organs. And the last one, unity in the spiritual reality, unity in men's spiritual level, unity of all religions, unity of humanity. That's the resume of the whole book.
So let's pick one of those and as a starting point and unpack it a little bit. Pick one of those essential areas of unity and tell us a little bit about how it works and how you describe it in your book.
Which one would you prefer, the spiritual reality or the physical reality? Let me start with one that is the most amazing one. When we hear science, there's another principle. No conflict between science and religion. I have a book on that one too. That is the complementary vision of total reality, science and religion. And so what science has told us right now, that especially with the Hubble telescope and all those telescopes out there, is that the universe out there was unknown to us. Now is an impressive millionaire, billionaire of galaxies, and each galaxy is of millions of stars. And in those stars, probably 200 to 300,000 habitable worlds. And of those habitable worlds, probably 20,000 of them with humans in them. And so one can ask, how can that universe be in harmonious, stable and it is not in a permanent collision of galaxies in an array of disorder. And what you see there is an incredible unity of interrelationship of galaxies, of stars, of planets. They all have their own orbits around their own suns. Every galaxy has their own rotation around its core. There is a unity in the organization that it is maintained through now our knowledge through physical laws that are constant. And so where could that unity come from unless an incredible creator could organize billions and billions and billions of stars in an organized fashion that has unity? Extraordinary.
Amen to that. I love talking about the book of Genesis, because the very first chapter of Genesis describes that. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. And then it talks about this primordial substance, this dark matter, actually. And the Spirit of God hovered above the waters. It's called the primordial waters. But we know from study of all ancient texts that this is symbolic of chaos. One example is that the waters were symbolic of, the sailors would be out in the sea and the ocean, and there were dark things underneath that could come up. The Kraken, Leviathan in the Bible, these creatures that were hidden in the dark mass of the waters that would take the sailors' lives. And of course, the storms could play out and take the sailors' lives. There was chaos brewing just underneath the surface. And this first statement about creation is that God brings order from chaos, as you describe, with laws, with fundamental laws and organizing principles that bring this unity about by conforming it to a divine purpose and a divine will. And you're describing that at all these different layers. So take a different one then from there. Let's like biology, for example. Okay. I mentioned the single cell and how it works, but tell us about the essential unity within biology.
Well, you have a unit in the plant structure, unit in the animal's internal organs, and unit in man's internal organs. When you go to any one of those levels, you find all what you just said. There's a basic unit in the cell, basic unit in the organ, basic unit in the systems of the organs. And all of them are working in unity to maintain life progressing, maintain life thriving, maintain life evolving. All of them at the plant structure, at the internal organs of the animals, and the internal organs systems of man. And it's plain. We have 72 systems. 72? No. We have 7 systems inside of our body. The circulatory, the digestive system, the pulmonary system, is all of them. And they all work in unison. As long as we take care of rationally of it, they work all. You don't have to give the instruction of breathe. If we have to be conscious of breathing every time we take an inspiration, we won't be doing anything else but doing that all our life. And then there will be no creative process. And so the unity of all of the organs in the animal, the plant structure, the internal organs of the animals or our organs, is that they all work in unity to maintain a life structure of the animals or the plants or us. And the principle just holds very true.
Perfect. So let's talk about one of the spiritual principles then. Let's take the oneness of religion. You had these early experiences in the Catholic Church, and you came to the conclusion that there were certain things within it that were not of God, that were man-made,
right?
And you departed from it. And yet you still maintain that the religions are one. Unpack that for us. How does that work?
Yeah. I think that really what made me do that separation was the principle of progressive revelation. When I understood that, then I realized that every religion that we have recorded history has had an emissary, a God chosen person to be the prophet to give a specific revelation. But every one of them appear in a moment of history, in a particular culture, in a particular country, with a specific language, with a background. When they appear, already there was a cultural background of belief systems. And so in that model of so many religions, of so many belief systems, one had to go to the source of the original statements made by the manifestation of what was the revelation, the original revelation, not the man-made interpretations. The man-made interpretations are the ones that created the battle between religions. Because then those interpreters, especially the clergy, began to feel that they had the authority to speak in the name of God, and the other ones were not speaking in the name of God because that couldn't be true. It was me. I am the interpreter of God's will and God's. So that is where religion goes to pieces, because it is man-made interpretation. So one has to go to the source of what was said by the prophet, if it is consigned in one written form or not. And then you can see that in every religion, there's a common thread. One God, one humanity, and how we practice the one God in contact with God is through do unto others what they want you to be done unto you. Do not harm others as you don't want them to harm you. And so the essence of those teachings are constant in all religions. That is why there's unity of religion.
All right, so that's a great segue to the next commercial break. When we come back, I'm going to dig into that a little bit deeper. We'll talk about that oneness of religion and where this is going next for Reynaldo and for all of us. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back with more of Reynaldo Pareja on Created in the Image of God.
What can you do to sharpen your vision of the economy beyond your wildest imagination? Introducing Divine Economy Model by Bruce Kerber, a book that escorts you through a very human way of building subjective models. These models are visual, logical, and conceptual. They acknowledge the complementary nature of human intellect and spirituality in all human action. Will you be able to grasp these economic models? Absolutely. You will feel as if you are building the models yourself. They fit into your imagination every step of the way, making logical sense while surprising you with new insights. To say that you've never experienced anything like this before is an understatement. Since when have you encountered a qualitative model of the economy that captures purposeful, spiritual, human action? You will suddenly recognize how intimately connected we are and how the economy empowers us as individuals and fulfills our social nature. The four models presented in this book, macroeconomics, microeconomics, ethical economics, and economic justice, are cohesively bound together. Divine Economy Model by Bruce Kerber. Get your copy now at Amazon.
Welcome back to Created in the Image of God. I'm here with Reynaldo Pareja, and we are concluding now with a deep dive into the oneness of religion. And I'm loving this because we learned about Reynaldo's journey through the Jesuit system in Colombia and coming out the other end because of certain teachings that he found to be not sensible from his perspective. And yet, as a Baha'i today, his focus is on unity and oneness of religion. So this allows me to share that when I, in 2004, began investigating the Baha'i faith, one of the first things I was told, because I was a former minister and I had done a lot of work in Europe and in different languages and around the world, I was told, oh, all the religions are one. And I laughed, I scoffed. I said, that's the stupidest thing I've ever heard. In case you didn't notice, they're out there killing each other. And even in Christianity, which I was a Christian still, we've been sending each other to hell for thousands of years, even within Christianity. And this was a problem. I wasn't saying this was a benefit or a good feature. We hadn't even figured it out within Christianity, which is why I was searching, which is why the Baha'i faith was intriguing to me, because the Baha'i faith offered a promise of unity, which I wanted and needed in my life, but my own theology was preventing me from achieving unity. So I knew what the goal was. Can't we all just get along? But didn't know how to get there. And the Bible says the way of peace they know not, right? So the Baha'i faith offered this theology, but my initial reaction was, nah, that's stupid. And then they told me, well, there's this little book called One Common Faith. I'm like, okay, well, let's start there and let's begin looking at faith, right? So now, in terms of this oneness of religion, and even the Catholic Church, you were sharing, Reynaldo, that one of the ways this works is that God sends a messenger at a point in time to a people in a certain circumstance, and the teachings are pure. A little while ago, we referenced Jesus saying, "Why do you call me Lord, Lord, and don't do the things that I say?" Well, if that was true in his day, and that was already true amongst some of his disciples, and even Peter, denied him 3 times on the cross before the rooster crowed the next morning, and his disciples, he said, "Smite the shepherd, and the sheep will scatter," and that was prophesied. And then you had this unfolding over the centuries, and we were very aware of corruption, as you mentioned, the Council of Nicaea and other things. Corruption crept into the teachings of Jesus, and you have 40,000 denominations today. Obviously, they can't all be right. And the problem is they all insist that they are right, to the point where we're going to heaven and you're going to hell over some picky little doctrine that is unprovable, right? The Trinity. It's really not provable one way or another. It's a matter of belief and profession. So there's a solution to all this, and the solution is that when things get really out of hand, God sends a new messenger to bring about unity again. And when Muhammad came, he united the tribes of Arabia, and so on and so forth. So I guess the point is, one of the organizing principles that the Baha'i faith teaches is the twin pillars of civilization, Baha'u'llah says, are reward and punishment. So this is an organizing principle. Today, the peoples are contending around this point. Many people think we should be doing away with punishments, and we should be doing away with rewards in the pursuit of equality and oneness, they say. Because like me, people all around the world want peace. They want unity. They want oneness, but they have a different idea of how to get there. And one of the organizing principles, Baha'u'llah says, is that reward and punishment are the twin pillars of civilization. One path towards unity and oneness is to try to remove rewards and punishments, to kind of come up with some other system to make everybody equal. Communism would be another example in which you remove the idea of property ownership. And one of the theories behind Marxism and communism is remove the idea of property ownership, and then everything belongs to the state, and somehow then that will bring about unity. Well, we haven't seen that work out. So you have these different ideas of how to get there, and then the independent investigation of truth leads us towards it, right? Are you following me? So if we all agree that we need to become one, and we have that today, it's tolerance, right? It's unity. We have to accept all the different perspectives in a pluralistic society. And in America, we've been a leader in that we've had people from all over the planet come to this one nation and learn one language. And we have 50 different nations called states who all agreed to submit to one federal government and cooperate while retaining some autonomy, but cooperate with a federal system, again, in leading the world towards unity. We talked about the hidden words of Baha'u'llah, the first and second hidden word. I want to read a brief, tiny piece of a quote from something called the Tablet of Ahmad. You're familiar with this, Reynaldo. It's a one of those pieces of writing that a lot of Baha'is are familiar with and they like to recite because we're told to. We're told there's a power in it. And there's this little phrase in them. We're talking about one of these messengers of God, the manifestation of God, the true one. And it says, to whose commands we are all conforming. Right? Again, this is the idea that God is not forcing us into submission, but we are voluntarily conforming. So these teachings of Baha'u'llah that you address, these onenesses, guess what? Open your eyes, look around, people. They've all been adopted by the world. Everyone on the planet agrees with these principles. The devil is in the detail. How do we get there? And we have to study into the writings of all the manifestations of God. You can get there from the teachings of the Bible. You can get there from the teachings of the Quran. You can get there from the teachings of Hinduism or the Buddha. But now you have to look at them in a new light, in the light of this modern enlightenment, this modern era in which we have a new vision of oneness and unity around the whole planet. But you really have to study in now and dig into how to do it. So Jesus says, love your enemies. What does that look like? And then we find those same things even in the Old Testament, in the Hebrew scriptures. There, you're not told directly to love your enemies, but you are told different ways how to get along with them and how to make peace with your enemies. So anyway, I just want to kind of put that out there, Reynaldo, and invite you to talk more about your perspective as a Baha'i. How does this play out? What are some of the things that are going on in the Baha'i community maybe that lead us or teach us or show us how this unity will come about?
You really ask one of the questions that cannot be responded easily in a short amount of time. But
let me give you one more thought, and that is that we're often taught in the Baha'i faith about the role of the individual, the role of the institutions, and the role of the community. How these three things work together to bring about harmonious relations in a local area.
Yeah. My almost immediate reaction would be to invite all our audience to actually become interested, inquisitive of how to go about even thinking on how to get to that unity, and to read one book that is called The New World Order. Because there it is expressed very, very carefully, very slowly, how that construction must come about in an organized way. The second idea is, yes, you pointed out to something that is crucial. We are in the crossroad of a new generation of humanity, in the sense that we are awakening like never before to a collective consciousness that did not exist before because we didn't have the means. We have now the technological means of being interconnected, superficially or very intimately through this social media, et cetera, et cetera. That level of consciousness requires that we individually, collectively, and at the community level start thinking very seriously, how do we work in a way that we can bring about unity of religion and unity of humanity. And we have, as Baha'is, we have an experience that is going on all over the world, and it is called community building, that starts from the very family to the community, to the neighborhood, to the larger community, national community, then the international community. That requires a process of dialogue that we must agree how to dialogue without imposing our ideas. And that's a principle of the Baha'i faith that is extraordinary, and that is a consultation. I put forth my idea and leave it out there. Everybody puts their idea, they leave it out there. Then we all consult all those ideas and come up with something that we all can agree that is a workable and applicable way of becoming, having unity of religion, and or unity of the neighborhood, or unity of the country. But I guess we have to really become extremely active in this conscious development, that we are in the crux of human development. I would say evolutionary development that is inviting us to really consider that we're only one human race, the human race, that we habit only in one country, the planet. And we therefore have to come to an agreement of how to manage ourselves and the one only country without destroying it in the most rational, consultative way, so that we can actually agree on goals of unity that are progressive. I don't know if that answers.
No, that's beautiful and really well said. And I'm reminded of something. So where do you live these days, Reynaldo? Where are you located?
In Miami.
In Miami. So we're pretty far north of you, way up on the Canadian border in Wisconsin. But we're doing some of the same things in our area, similar, probably a little bit differently. But
Yeah.
one of the features of this community building process is something called the nucleus, right? And
Right.
you have various nuclei in your area, and we have one that my wife and I and our family, we're building something called the interfaith nucleus.
Excellent.
And on the other side of town, in a neighboring town, they focus on something they call the race amity nucleus. And their focus is more on, racial relations, whereas ours is more on religious unity. And somebody else, might form a slightly different nucleus, right? But I'm thinking now of this essential principle of oneness. And I talked about the single cell and its semi-permeable barrier, which selectively decides what to let in and out to protect itself and to grow and be healthy. And then within the cell, you have something called RNA and you have something called DNA. And these things work together, again, on how to help the cell. So my point being that at the very smallest cellular level, we are protagonists. We are learning, we are growing, and we're told to adopt a humble posture of learning in these nuclei, so that at the local level, we're open to actually listening to our neighbors, to talking to our neighbors, to treating our neighbors as brothers and sisters, and to explore the different views and see what we have in common and what's different and how we can work together, all based on the Word of God. And one thing the reason we're very involved in the interfaith nucleus here is exactly that. I want people to bring the Bible into it, Old and New Testaments. One of my goals was to get all the different religions represented. And for a long time, we had never met a Zoroastrian. And then we met one, and then we met another. We've had several Zoroastrians participate, and Muslims and Hindus and Buddhists and Jews and all manner of Christians, all participating together in how to build a vibrant local community at the cellular level.
Excellent.
And sometimes it's not easy. Sometimes it's not easy finding even the right people to participate or who want to participate. But once you get that little community growing, amazing things start to happen. Seeds start to sprout, plants start to grow, and unity grows as well. Well, we're out of time, Reynaldo. What do you have that you want to leave with the audience here at the end of the show before we go to the sneak peek of next week's show?
I guess one would be an invitation to whoever is going to listen to our program and recording is, if you have any curiosity, let's put it that way, any curiosity about religion that you think you would like to explore, do not be hesitant. Dive, explore, read, question, investigate, because that's the only way to broaden up your inner frame of reference that would allow you to grow internally, collect individually at the nuclei, and then collectively at the national level.
In the words of Jesus, knock and it shall be open. Ask and you will get an answer. Seek and you will find. And in the Baha'i faith, it's all about being a seeker.
Yeah. Yeah.
Reynaldo, what a pleasure having you here this morning. And I'm sure we'll have you back. For everybody else, don't go anywhere. We're going to show the sneak peek of next week's show next Sunday, December 7th. So stay tuned for that. And meanwhile, remember, you are created in the image of God, and God loves his creation. We will see you next week. Hey everyone, Wade Franson here with a sneak peek. Recurring guest this week, Michael Stone. Last time we had him on, he was just returning from a retreat where he was silent for quite a number of days. This time he's got a pending operation, surgery. I don't know if that impacted the flow of our discussions, but we've just completed, the show is in the can, and this is the sneak peek. Welcome to the studio, Michael.
Thank you, Wade. It's really always good to be with you.
Well, and we have both the gift of prophecy here, because we can talk about the future as though it's already happened, because it has in our world right here. We spent an hour talking about oneness, fear, systems broken, and what to do about them. In a nutshell, you know, what can guests expect from this episode, having already recorded it?
Well, I hope that what it brings about is curiosity, to really look and not just say, yes, that's true, or no, I don't believe in that, but to really sit. And as I said in the show, you know, when you asked for a statement, I said, it's time to soften and slow down. You can't outrun the fear. Believe me, I've tried it. But if we can slow down and allow ourselves to really be with some of the fear, we will have incredible revelations come to us through just paying attention and bringing ourselves into deeper and deeper states of presence.
Well, for the audience who may have missed Michael on his first go around, the trauma that Michael experienced early in his life and throughout his life is really just unimaginable. And by admission, he said it, you know, took him at least 30 years to even begin to overcome the idea that he was a victim and take responsibility for his life. So there's a depth of wisdom that comes from experience that Michael shares. One of the things, Michael, that really got me was this idea of, you know, rugged individualism on the one hand versus a divine individuation on the other hand. Do you want to just spend a moment, you know, touching on that?
Yeah. Individuation is the maturity of the soul. It's what happens particularly when we start out with being felt, seen, heard, held, and protected by a caring witness, someone looking in our eyes with love. And it allows us to mature. When we didn't do that, we move into individualism, which is, I'll do it my way. I'm going to be strong. And it eliminates the beauty of relatedness, being related in community, with my ancestors and with future generations, as well as the collective.
Well, and every time I talk to you, I get a new insight. The one that I just had now, the epiphany, is God saw and said it was good.
Yes.
God saw, heard, and acknowledged even his creation.
Mm-hmm.
And he expressed that every day. Wow. And for those of you who tune in on the 7th of December to watch this show, there's a lot more of those kinds of epiphanies. Thank you, Michael, for being here with us. And we'll see everyone listening to the sneak peek on the 7th at 8 p.m. Oh, excuse me. No, this is a Sunday morning show, 7 a.m. live, Central Time on Created in the Image of God, Sunday morning at 7.